Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Dropping the Anchor. I'm Adam Bernstein. Along with me is Katie Siegel and Noah McLean. How you guys doing today?
Doing pretty well, thank you. How about you, Bernie?
Doing well. We have a lot to talk about today between URI, professional sports, and then just a little bit more of what's going on in the sports world. But I think we should stick with URI first, and we'll kick things off with Archie Miller. He had another press conference following his introductory press conference, really just to talk about some of the coaches that he would bring in onto his staff and some of his recruiting plans over this off-season. He talked about, really what he wants to do in a recruiting standpoint, a little bit of the balance from bringing in players from the transfer portal and also recruiting players. But before we talk about recruiting, let's talk about some of the coaches he brought in. He brought in Kenny Johnson, Dwayne Woodward, and retaining Austin Carroll. What are your guys' reactions to some of those coaches?
I think that retaining Austin Carroll is going to be huge. I think having that part of David Cox and what they did this year and the following years, I think that's really going to carry over into Archie Miller's crew, and I think it's really going to help them benefit.
Yeah, I agree. I think also part of rebuilding a program is bringing in new guys along with guys that know the ropes. So you have a balance between that, like Adam, you were mentioning there, because now you have players and at least an assistant coach that know the ropes, that know what it's like here to play in the Ryan Center, and then some new guys that come in and can help rebuild the process, because URI, while I wouldn't consider them a rebuilding team in some of their success levels that they could have, they're definitely a rebuilding team in who they're going to have on their roster. So absolutely,
and a lot of plans upcoming for the 2022 season. And a big quote that he had is every decision we make, we have to center things around our players. And you talk a lot about just bringing in players. And right now, with only 5 guys actively on scholarship, with a lot of them leaving into the transfer portal, we'll get into some of that. It's really going to be an adjustment period for the program. Another thing that he spoke on during the press conference that I just want to touch on, we talked about the balance of the roster itself, but also just bringing in the idea of international players. I know, in fact, one of the 6 players that they've offered is Vashin Ali, a 6'3" point guard out of Ontario, Canada. So what do you guys think about maybe potentially reaching out internationally and trying to recruit talent that way?
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, on the women's side of things for Rhode Island, we've seen a lot of success, and I think if you're going to win games, you got to find players that are going to be successful wherever. I know, a guy that sticks out to me. I know I'm a Syracuse fan. I have a bias there, but you talk about players that were recruited. They brought in a lot of guys from non-American athletes, so it's going to be very interesting to see what they can do. And I love the fact that they're offering foreign players.
I do too, because I also feel like even though they're not entirely rebuilding, they are going to lose a lot of key components to their squad. And I think that bringing in anything from any different angle, whether it's anybody that the assistant coaches bring in, or international players, or both, I think that the rebuilding period, even though it's small, I think it'll be good for the team.
Absolutely, and we talk about recruiting, but also with recruiting, there are some players leaving the program. So we'll start with Antoine Walker. Katie, your reaction to him joining Bryant, just staying in state and playing for Coach Grasso?
Yeah, the fact that he's going up north and staying in Rhode Island I like, but the way he's not going to be on our team I do not like, because I thought that he really was a presence in the URI's team, and I think that losing him is going to be a big hole that they're going to have to fill. And considering he'd been there for 3 years, and I think he's going to do great things at Bryant, but I'm certainly going to miss him, and I think Rhodey will too.
Yeah, there's no real true 6-man in college basketball, but he sort of was that 6-man for Coach Cox this past year, and he was a starter the year before. Definitely a valuable player on both ends of the ball, but certainly not the only front court piece that we're going to be losing this off-season. The Mitchell twins, another one. Noah, your reaction to them transferring to Arkansas to play in the SEC?
Yeah, Adam, I have pretty mixed emotions about this, actually, and I'll start with the fact that Makel Mitchell was 18th in the nation at one point in blocked shots, and that's going to be a huge loss of presence inside the paint, and he's fantastic at what he does. In that sense, and obviously Makai's brother, he goes up, he contests well, and they always could bring the ball up. You watch URI play, any guy on the floor at any point will bring the ball up, and I love that about the Mitchell twins. However, we know things weren't always smooth sailing Free throws, I'm going to say it, and I'll say it as nicely as I can, horrifically. That's the nicest I can go with their free throw shooting. And I think that there's opportunity to bring in some new guys that can be a little more versatile in that sense and do different things. But we'll see what happens, and I have faith in Archie Miller to find some new big men.
Absolutely. Definitely a lot of work that him and this new coaching staff have to put together, especially, again, on the front court side. But we're going to stick with URI basketball, move over to the women's side. In recent news, Tammy Reese, a big contract extension there, 10 years, $4.4 million. She certainly deserved it, guys. Over the last 3 seasons, maybe not this season ending the way that they had hoped, but an NIT appearance is always nice. Just what do you think about just such a well-deserved contract extension for the women's basketball head coach?
I love it. I love it. I love Tammy Reese. I love the women's basketball program here, and I think she just makes it better, way better. I think that her drive and her energy on Rhode Island's team is really going to push us to get some success later in the line, or later in time, but maybe not yet. Maybe they need a couple more years to get things going, kind of solidify her role, get some new people in perhaps as all the seniors are leaving. But I love it. I'm stoked that she's here. I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Tammy Reese is a phenomenal coach. I love her passion to the game. I love her passion to her players. No matter if it's 1 year that they've been here, 4 years that they've been here, you can see she has a love for the game in every sense possible. And I think that is something that she has, that loyalty that she has is something you don't see a lot with coaches these days. And coaches will say they're loyal, and coaches will say, I'm happy to be here. But she really means it. She really means when she says, I'm happy to be here, I want to be here. I think that 10-year, $4.4 million deal is fantastic for a program building and a reputation building, both for Tammy Reese and her future as a coach and for URI's women's basketball program as a whole.
Yeah, she certainly earned every penny of that contract. And what you talked about, just go off what you said, Noah, really just the energy that she presents on the court. It does show on and off the court, inside the locker room, the chemistry that the team had this past year. It does not go unnoticed. And again, I think they're just a year or two away from getting to being a contender in the A-10 championship. And really this year they were a contender, but they're just one step away. And there's no one better to lead that program than Tammy Reese. So definitely not enough good things to say about that program and the work that she's done. Moving on to football, most recently, the URI Football Pro Day kicked off, and several Rhodey players presented in front of some NFL scouts as they are declaring for the NFL draft this upcoming season. Just to name a couple players, LB Mack, Kobe Tippett, Joey Kenny, Justin Antrim, Andre Blackett, CJ Carrick, and Ivory Frimpong were all in attendance there. I'm curious, they all had some pretty exciting seasons and really just exciting careers here at URI, but who do you guys think, out of those players, I think Ivory Frimpong is definitely one of them, but who do you guys think, has the best shot of getting drafted or really having a career in professional football?
My pick is LB Mack III, the redshirt senior. He made the CAA football all-conference second team this year. He started all 11 games as the outside linebacker for the Rams. He finished the season with 51 tackles. He was very effective in multiple games. We saw him do good things up at Villanova, at Townsend, at Maine, and he was just consistent all year long. He was recording sacks. He was making big stops, and I just love his presence. He works hard. I'm good friends with a couple of the football players, and you talk to him, he's got a nose for the game, and he wants to win. And I think a guy like that, even if he isn't getting a lot of success or a lot of playing time at first in the NFL, if he would go there, I think that's a guy that you want on your team in order to just boost that morale around your program.
No doubt, LB Mack has done invaluable work for Rhodey football, and I'm going to go with Ivory Frimpong as well. I think the way he's able to dominate that wide receiver position on the outside is phenomenal. I think that the energy he brings to the team is phenomenal. I think that it's just a genuine, great human being. Once people see who he is, what he's like on the field, off the field, I think that's something that will be an asset for him.
Yeah, character is certainly a big thing, especially in the NFL, on and off the field, and he does do a great job presenting that. I've had a couple of classes with him and spoken to him as well, so definitely some good choices there. CJ Carrick, another one, the kicker. I believe he holds the program record for most field goals here at URI. So definitely another player that could be getting scouted or potentially drafted and finding an opportunity at the professional level. Last thing around campus here at URI is the men's lacrosse team, currently dominating their conference. Most recently, victorious over UMass Dartmouth to advance to 7-1 and 4-1 in conference play. What do you guys have on them?
I mean, I have a class with one of the guys on the lacrosse team, and he just said that they're just clicking well. They've been playing well. They've been moving the ball well. They've been able to find the back of the net pretty easily. They're just winning games, and they're finding different ways to win games. I think that's a big thing for this lacrosse team here at URI is they're finding ways to win games, and they're successful, and that's going to continue to just boost their ability to win games.
Absolutely, and that success I don't think comes from nowhere. I mean, everyone says it, but you practice how you play. And I think I was able to see some of their practices, and I think that they just look like they're ready to get at it. They want this. They want the conference win. They want to have the best record. They want to get to the championship. They really want it. And I think with their drive, and like you were saying, their successes so far this season, I think they can really do something.
Yeah, for sure. Before we move on from URI, one more thing I actually want to bring up, and that's URI baseball. Maybe not the best start that they've had to this season. A couple of tough losses down south with Tennessee and Auburn, some of those SEC schools, but definitely starting to fight back a little bit as they enter conference play. Last weekend against Dayton on the road, they took 2 out of the 3, winning that series. This past weekend at home, winning that series against St. Bonaventure. Certainly a lot to talk about there, and Dominic Lacone also getting some recognition at the conference level.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned his name, Dominic Lacone. The dude is just a strikeout machine. And when you run through the list of URI baseball players, especially pitchers, ERAs are high at them. And Katie, I think they're high, but they're false representative of the ability of what they're able to do. We watched Lacone go out and record 12 strikeouts a few weekends ago. And that just to me is a dominant performance. That was against UConn. He went out 25th and now currently 18th ranked in the nation. So that's a very powerful offensive team. And again, we watched him go out this weekend against St. Bonaventure. And Adam, you and I had the chance to call the game the following day. And there's just a lot of talent that I think is starting to emerge on that URI squad.
I couldn't agree more, and it shows. I mean, the way they weren't perhaps doing as well beginning of the season, turning something around, winning the weekend series this past weekend, I think it might be enough to propel them perhaps to some success later in the season. I don't know. I certainly hope so. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, we shall see. Certainly a lot of baseball left to be played as we continue to go on through conference play and as the conference tournament comes up with just a couple weeks to go. Now moving on to what's going on around professional sports. We'll start with March Madness. Kansas winning the national championship. The question remains, were they the best team this past season? I know they were a #1 seed team, but in my opinion, UNC, certainly the performance that they had cannot go unnoticed, especially Armando Bacot playing through that injury towards the final 2 games there, and of course RJ Davis' performance. And also credit first-year head coach Hubert Davis. He really set the ground for other first-year head coaches that are entering new programs. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, Adam, North Carolina played extremely well in that game, and that nothing can take away from that. We saw just a phenomenal performance. Also from Kansas on the other side of things, being down 15 points at halftime and being able to come back and winning that game. You got to tip the cap to Kansas in doing that, but you're absolutely right. Armando Bacot and I love the fact a lot of people at the beginning of the year they were saying Roy Williams is leaving and Kansas was not going to do much, but just stepped up so big this year and just really showed that North Carolina is going to be a presence to be reckoned with in the future, despite losing such a talented head coach.
Their success this season, I think, speaks to the program and speaks to, even though Roy Williams is gone, they were still able to come back and have a phenomenal season. Speaking for myself, I mean, we knew that Kansas was going to be good. We knew Duke was going to be good. We knew all these other, #1 seeds, high-seeded teams were going to be good. didn't expect a number 8 at UNC, honestly, to be where they ended up. But then once I saw them playing, first time I watched them play was against St. Peter's, which I'm still sad about that team. But the way they were playing was great, and I think that they really earned their spot in the championship, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. You bring up St. Peter's, and before we move on from college basketball, I think there's just something worth noting right there, the performance that they had. Certainly some recognition even now post-tournament, as Shaheen Holloway, head coach, is finally landing a job at his alma mater in Seton Hall. Then also Doug Eddard, really the unsung hero of the tournament, moving to Rhode Island actually to join Coach Grasso and former URI Ram Antoine Walker.
Yeah, that is, I mean, I was really surprised by that. I was predicting that he was going to go to Seton Hall and end up there. I actually have a friend from high school that's at Seton Hall. He met Doug and got a selfie with him. So that was awesome to see. But I was surprised. But I think that gives me an opportunity to go see Doug, and I'm excited. So all hail Doug in my eyes. So welcome to Rhode Island.
I'm really excited to see him pair up with Anton Walker as well. I think them both going to a school that's already had some success. I mean, they're the reigning, NEC champs, and I think that's something that's great. I think the program's going to do really well with those 2 new additions.
Yeah, and Coach Grasso just signing a big extension as well. But we'll move on now to the NFL and the NFL draft, especially. That's just a couple weeks away. Some big names and destinations really just up in the air right now. I mean, my bold take right now is Malik Willis, the Liberty quarterback, heading to Philadelphia. I think this is really one more year now for Jalen Hurts to really prove himself. And he is a little bit of an undersized quarterback. He came in a situation where he was the second-string quarterback. This is the year, though. If they don't go above and beyond to win the NFC East, I think they might go after a quarterback, and I think Malik Willis might be a good fit. What are some of your guys' bold takes?
I like Jalen Hurts a lot, and I think that I hope he is able to have that success, and maybe having this kind of person behind him to kind of put the pressure on will turn into something great for him as a player, especially a young player. I mean, even though he's 2-3 years out of college, I mean, he's still a young player in the league. Just getting his chance to shine last year with Carson Wentz going to the Colts, and then it's going to be great. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with that. I will say, can't agree more. And I also, as a Giants fan, but also as an NFL fan, I think everyone's interested to see if it's going to be another year of a laughing stock of a draft with the New York Giants. They have 2 top 10 picks this year, and I really think that the Giants, it's make or break with who they get. Charles Cross is projected at the fifth pick from Mississippi State, the 6'5", 270 outside tackle. I think he's a fantastic option for the Giants. I would hope that they were able to pick him up. Evan Neal is also one place behind him. He's projected possibly to go to Carolina, but I can see those two as kind of interchangeable. I like both of those players. Obviously, Evan Neal at Alabama under Coach Saban. Any guy that comes out of Alabama is going to be just high quality. And then they also have the 7th pick, and Ahmad Gardner from Cincinnati projected there. We'll see what happens, but I think as a Giants fan and just as an NFL draft interest, it'll be very interesting to see if the Giants can get their act together and pull together some good draft picks this year.
And if I could add as well, speaking of laughing stock, as a Jaguars fan, I'm willing to see what's going on. With our second number 1 pick in a row, I'm hoping that maybe, we can have a little bit more success with we need like 100 picks to get something to work. But hopefully, with our number 1 pick this year, we'll be able to make something happen.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm with you on being a Giants fan. I think Evan Neal is a perfect fit as an offensive tackle, again from Alabama. The products that they usually have out of that program are outstanding in the NFL. But I think another thing worth noting is the national championship team, the Georgia Bulldogs. They have a great defensive end in Trayvon Walker. So with that being also a need for a lot of these teams, obviously there's Aiden Hutchinson and Kevon Thibodeau, who are also defensive ends. It'll be interesting to see where some of these DNs land.
Yeah. There's really 3 teams that are looking for defensive ends in this top 5 picks. And you could see those three players that you just mentioned, Adam, really going anywhere. And, between the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Detroit Lions, and the New York Jets, it's going to be a matter of who wants what for their program. And I think any of those programs will be well off with any of those three guys. High quality players from Michigan, Oregon, and like you mentioned, the national champions Georgia, and so all three of those guys are going to be up there in that top 5.
Well, moving on to Major League Baseball, obviously a season that we didn't know what was going to happen, if it would even happen. Finally, just getting out of the opening day or opening weekend of the 162-game series. It's just so great to have baseball back. What are your guys' reactions to just some things going around baseball?
I paid particular attention to Boston, New York this weekend, and Adam, I know you're a Yankee fan.
I am.
Are you a Sox fan?
I'm a Sox fan.
All right, so I got some support up here. Okay, cool. Because that first game, I'm not a fan of Yankee Stadium personally, as a Sox fan. This is completely coming from a biased perspective, but that first game going into 11 innings, I thought was really telling for how both those teams in the AL East are going to compete. And it's always exciting to see the rivalry, always exciting to see what happens there. Even though it didn't go in our favor this time, I'm confident that maybe next time might be a little different story.
Yeah, as a Sox fan, disappointing. But in the opening weekends, we actually saw some success from the Mets. Speaking of New York teams, I do got to give a little bit of a tip of the cap to that. I also I will note I'm going to a Red Sox and Angels game on May 3rd. I'm very excited to see Ohtani and Mike Trout. I definitely like the Angels this year for what they can do. I think they have a lot of offensive power, and those two guys and others down the lineup. And I also a sneaker around, in my opinion, the White Sox. I think they have a chance to do some dangerous things. AJ Pollock, we talked about him before. Unfortunately, he got traded, but I think I've followed him for a while. I like what he does for his teams, whatever that may be, and but those are kind of my two teams that I like so far.
Yeah, absolutely. For me personally, and this is coming from a Yankee fan, I think it does stay in the AL East this year. I think Vlad Guerrero is sort of snubbed of an MVP, and obviously you talk about the Angels and some of the success that they have there. It still boggles my mind that Mike Trout has not won a playoff game in his career. That he hasn't even had a championship under his belt at this point. But I do think the Blue Jays are sneaky good. I think they're dangerous. Vlad Guerrero is due for an MVP. I think their pitching is very underrated, very talented, and then with the addition of Matt Chapman, it's just impossible to, question this infield that they have now between Vlad Guerrero, Kevin Biggio, and Chapman over at third base.
I think that young team is really coming into itself as well. And now they were younger players, busting into the league last season, 2 seasons ago, and now that they're finding their footing, getting used to the league, finding the way that they can work as a team, and with the addition of Chapman, I think it can only help. I think the Blue Jays, like you said, might be a little sneaky. I'm a little nervous, I can't lie.
Yeah, absolutely. And also another thing to think about, just to talk about them, is that being in Canada and some of the vaccination rules, it'll be interesting to see with some of the players coming into Canada to play the Blue Jays, if they're even eligible to play. I know a couple of players like Aaron Judge, who is unvaccinated. Will that make an impact in some of the games that they play at the Rogers Center this upcoming season? And this isn't in the script, but we'll talk about it. Aaron Judge, what do you guys think about? I know you guys are both Red Sox fans, but declining the contract extension, I know that surprised me for sure. Testing out the market a little bit this offseason. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's about money, Adam. I think a lot of things are about money, and I think players are just like you said. They're gonna test the waters as much as they can to see just how much money they can make without the hammer coming down on them, so to say. And I have a buddy of mine that just got drafted to the MLB. 18 years old, $660,000 signing bonus. He hasn't even played a day in the MLB. So guys are obviously going to hunt for as much money as they possibly can. And I think Aaron Judge also, Maybe he wants to go to a different team. I don't really see that happening in the near future. I think he's, like I said, just testing his power that he holds over this organization. But if he does, I would be very intrigued to see where he's interested in going. So,
arguably, he's somewhat like the face of the Yankees. I
Yeah.
can't really
Yes.
imagine him in any other uniform, and maybe he might feel the same way. I mean, depending on the contract that he eventually will or will not sign. And to your point earlier, it's funny for me to see the insane amount of money that these players are getting paid now. Because every new deal, it feels like it's the most expensive deal ever. And we're just going to keep on seeing that. And it's really fascinating to see. And particularly with Judge, I was surprised he didn't sign, certainly. And I don't really know what would happen. I don't see him leaving, though. I just don't see him without the 99, the pinstripes. I don't see it.
Yeah, and from a Yankee perspective, to your point, it makes you kind of think, if he overperforms, he's certainly going to get paid and get offered by some of these other teams. And you want him to overperform this season. Obviously, the goal is win a World Series and, have him be the MVP. But there's also the idea that if he doesn't win the World Series, he could not be in pinstripes next season. But if he underperforms, it's like, he just underperformed, and it's another unfortunate season for the Yankees. So it's really kind of in the middle. What do you want him to do? Do you want him to overperform with the thought in your mind that he might get paid and go somewhere else, or underperform where it's like, all right, maybe he can return to the Yankees. Obviously, nothing is guaranteed, but still, a lot of questions pretty much up in the air, and from a Yankee perspective, does make you think a little bit. For sure.
I would argue as well that one of the biggest questions is if he can stay healthy. Because he's not going to earn anything. He's not going to do any kind of performance if he can't get on the field. And I think with him, it's certainly been an issue in the past. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to move over to the NBA, specifically the playoffs just around the corner. The Celtics, I know I'm a Knicks fan, but the Celtics are looking extremely good. I believe they have the second seed at the moment. I mean, just what are your thoughts and reactions on the season, or really the last month or so that they've been having?
I mean, it's been a wild road for the Celtics. The Celtics had a horrific start to the season, and one of their first games against the Knicks, I remember watching that game.
Yep.
Went into, I think, double overtime. And I was just thinking to myself, I said, who is this nobody scoring 40 points on the Celtics right now? And the Celtics were horrible. Everyone had kind of counted them off. But the Celtics have come together. They've really figured out, I would say, really that only bump in the road, obviously, Robert Williams, with his injury. That was, unfortunate. But the Celtics have proved in these last few games that they can win without him. They're going to find ways to win games. I love Marcus Smart. He is my Defensive Player of the Year pick. I think there's nobody else in my mind that is the best defensive player in the league. I think that he is just so phenomenal with what he does. And then obviously the two guys that everyone talks about, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they figured it out. And people were critical of the two of them being in Boston again this year early on. A lot of people were wondering, are they going to stay? And I think that this is going to be a place for the two of them for a long time with the success that they're having.
It's exciting to see how they're able to form their team around those two stunning players as well. We see with a lot of different NBA teams, there's usually like one or two big name stars that are like doing everything. But I feel like with the Celtics, there's always someone else that's doing something great. Everyone's doing their part, and I feel like you don't really see that a lot in the NBA unless it's like a team that's not really having much success. But I think the way that they've been able to turn their season around, like you had said, it's admirable, and I'm excited to see where they end up going.
Yeah, and on the other hand, a rival of the Celtics, or really just an all-time rival, the Lakers, have desperately looking for a way to come back. I mean, I think they're ruled out of playoff contention now, especially now that they are parting ways with head coach Frank Vogel. But really, just they're in trouble with the way that they've been playing a lot lately, and certainly on paper, they shouldn't be having some of the struggles and some of the challenges that they have.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite frankly embarrassing. And I don't think there's any other way to say it. You have so much talent on that team, and the inability to win games just speaks to the inability of them to come together as a group. And I think team chemistry this year is a huge thing within the locker room. We've heard about it. Obviously the King, one of the, arguably the best player of all time in LeBron James, obviously Russell Westbrook. And Russell Westbrook is such a hard case to debate. And maybe you guys can add to this, but I really can't say whether I like the guy or I don't, because he has days that he is on, top of the world, and then other days where you watch him play and you think to yourself, what is this dude doing? And the Lakers just didn't look like they wanted to win games when they needed to, and I think that speaks to their season as a whole.
To comment on what you said about team chemistry, it just seemed like LeBron's injury was like the final nail in the coffin. Like, team morale was very low, and that the King going down just seemed to be like the last kick when they're already down. The way they're not able to bring it together is ridiculous, to your point. And I think it speaks to having so many stars but nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And it just makes you, wonder if Russell Westbrook is going to get dealt in the offseason. A team that I think I saw in rumors is Charlotte that could potentially go after him. I'm sure there's a couple of other teams that might be pursuing him, and really just what they'll do. I saw another rumor today that they're potentially looking at bringing in Raptors head coach Nick Nurse to replace Frank Vogel. So it'll just be interesting to see how the Lakers come back, a team that has dropped significantly just a couple of years after winning the NBA Finals and the championship. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, and if I can add one more thing, is I've also seen those rumors about going to Charlotte, and personally, I think that's a horrible idea. I think Charlotte has such a good thing going on right now with LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges and other guys, obviously Terry Rozier and just a handful of guys, Gordon Hayward, who was not as effective or efficient as we would have liked to have seen in Boston, but he really has found his groove in Charlotte. And I think Russell Westbrook, and again, tip of the cap to what he's able to do when he's on, but I think he would be a bridge burner if he went to Charlotte with the guys that they have. I think he looks to run the show too much, and there's too much talent on that team for him to go there.
I agree. They're trying to build something, and I don't think he's not the answer. He's not the final puzzle piece. And he's also getting older. And he's not he bases his game on a lot of athleticism. Mm-hmm. And it brings up the question of how long that's going to last. I mean, not that he's going to, not be able to play anymore, but it's definitely not going to be the same level that it had been.
Yeah, absolutely. And a guy that was certainly an MVP candidate just a couple of years ago. He was averaging a triple-double in his prime, really, with the OKC Thunder. So it'll just be interesting to see how he sort of gets out of this slump and, where he ends up playing ultimately. That's what it's going to come down to next season. But staying on MVP, and the last thing with the NBA, I'm just curious what your guys' MVP predictions are. For me, it's got to be Giannis Antetokounmpo. Just what he's done with the Bucks, obviously winning the championship last year, and then again carrying into this season.
I think Jokic is my MVP prediction. I think he's been phenomenal all year. He's just a guy that has done so many good things in the league. And if it's not him, I think my second is Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid, as much as I hate Philadelphia, I hate Philadelphia with all of my heart. But I will give him a tip of the cap. His presence is just undeniable inside. He is so good on the offensive end. He creates a lot of opportunities for himself that a lot of big men don't. He's able to block shots and do good things all around. So those are my two kind of first and second predictions for this year's MVP.
Those are three great names. I can see it being any of those guys. But I'm going Jokic too. I'm giving it to the Joker. I think the statistics he's putting up both defensively and offensively is just, frankly, it's kind of unmatched in a way. I am not a huge fan of the Nuggets, but I'm certainly a fan of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just going to be interesting to see, who does come away with the trophy. It certainly has been an exciting race, and some of those big men this past season. And, I think there's a lot of questions going forward. Who's going to win the finals, who, will really be the team to watch out for this postseason. So lots to look forward to in the NBA. And finally, moving on to lastly, but certainly not least, the Masters certainly wrapping up. Just a couple days ago, the #1 ranked golfer Scottie Scheffler holding off Rory McIlroy and Cameron Smith to just win the Masters by 3 strokes. This marks his 4th tour victory in the last 6 events. I think you were saying before we started recording, Noah, this is his first major. So, just thoughts on the New Jersey native coming away with the Masters.
Yeah, I mean, that was really something that I did not see coming. I think a lot of the focus, if not pretty much all of the focus coming into this tournament, and understandably so to an extent, was on Tiger Woods. And the fact that Tiger Woods was playing in the Masters is incredible. The fact that he's even walking right now is actually even more incredible. I'm happy that he was able to perform, and I expected the Masters to go for him just as it did. I think he was going to go out and he was going to play well, but he wasn't going to do enough. And to touch on Rory McIlroy, I'm a huge Rory McIlroy fan. I love Rory McIlroy's game, but we were talking about this before off the air, and somebody said it great. He played mediocre until the final minutes where he started to play really well, and you just got to imagine what he would have been able to do if he had played that well the entire time. I know there's one clip going around social media, this just incredible bunker shot he had where he chipped it out, and it was just fantastic. He reads the greens so well, but the New Jersey native coming away with his Masters and a big nod for him. Super happy, loved the performance, and a big congratulations for his first big win.
The cool thing about golf too is the disparity, or I guess the difference rather, between the younger golfers and the older golfers. You got the veterans like Rory and Tiger, and this new guy comes in, wins his first major. I love it. It's a good sports story, great success for him. It's great.
Yes, certainly. Again, a lot going on around the both professional and URI sports world, but that is going to wrap up the very first episode, or the first episode of Dropping the Anchor. Once again, Adam Bernstein, Noah McLean, and Katie Siegel, thank you so much once again for tuning in. We hope to see you next time.